Welcome back to LaunchPod. Today, we welcome Jen Couldrey, Executive Director at the Upside Foundation, and Ben Zifkin, Founder and CEO at Hubba. Ben has built a reputation as a founder who values giving back and paying forward his success, whether volunteering his time as a mentor or sitting on the board of the Upside Foundation. Over the years, Jen and Ben have built a movement within the Canadian startup ecosystem, amassing an army of over 250 founders who have pledged a percentage of their equity to their favorite charity through the Upside Foundation. Join us as Jenn Patterson, CMO at Next Canada, chats with them about why startup founders should think about embedding giving back into their business model from day one.
Okay, Ben and Jen, thanks so much for joining us today for one of our inaugural LaunchPod episodes.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Awesome. So we're here at the Hubba office, and the two of you go way back, I think several years, but Jen, you've been working here out of the Hubba space for about 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. And Ben, you're now part of the Upside Foundation board. I think that's been for a while now as well. So clearly you two like each other. But I think just to kind of get us started, how did you meet, and any kind of first impressions you want to share?
Well, when I joined Upside, you were already on the board. You'd been on the board since the beginning. So it was 7 years ago now, I think, which is wild. Yeah. And the Upside office has just always been based out of your space.
Yeah, I remember you came in, you were on the other half of the room. Yeah. Janie, one of the other board members, introduced us. And as anybody who's met Jen knows about the excitement that's always going on inside of her body as she, is running around. It's almost like
I am familiar.
Yeah, it's like almost like an athlete, like a sprinter before a race, just that nervous energy, like getting ready to push the starting gun. So that was Jen. She was all ready to jump in, all ready to do the job. And I think it was just about figuring out, okay, this is a very personal organization. So the people who started it obviously had some very personal feelings associated to it. And they used their personal relationships to start the initial fundraising, also get the initial companies on. So I think Jen was really sensitive to all that stuff. But you just saw her like ready to get in there. So I remember the first little bit, you had a really great kind of presence where you were there but learning, and then all of a sudden you just kind of said, okay, I got this thing, and it's just taken it from there ever since.
Cool. And I don't know, so I didn't know that you had been part of the Upside Foundation for so long. So how did that relationship begin for you?
Yeah, I think it even goes back even further than this. I was living overseas when I started Hubba. I wanted to go somewhere where I can grow a company. Toronto was always home. I looked at a whole bunch of different cities around the world and had all these great opportunities and decided to move back to Toronto. Toronto was just the beginning of this crest that we see right now. It was 2010, 2011. I started thinking of moving back here and realized that not only did I want to build a great company, I wanted a great company in Canada, a great Canadian company. And I believe that Toronto obviously was the most important place to be able to do that. And it had this really amazing ingredients, like all these amazing ingredients of really wonderful people, just getting onto the scene a little bit, had a few founders that were coming back, had a few successes. And so it was a couple generations in, and really realized that not only can we build a really great company here, but we can help build the community a little bit. So just the notion of being able to come back and help with the community was kind of the beginning of all of this. Mm-hmm. And although some of it sounds quite altruistic, a lot of it was just, I want to build a really big company. And to do that, you need a really fertile soil to be able to do that. And Jen and I talk about this all the time, about this notion of like giving back. And I never really liked that kind of phrase. For me, it was, you almost needed to invest in the community first. You're going to be reaping the rewards and reaping from the soil, that you need to invest in it first. So part of this was, how can we work with other entrepreneurs? How can we help pump other people up? How can we bring more people here? How can we start to create organizations like Upside? So that was the beginning, just that mentality and that thought process. And then it was the notion of, okay, what are we going to do about that? And there were a couple organizations, primarily in the US, that were doing something similar. There was one in Israel that was doing something similar as well. And we looked at working with a few of them, and this was a few VCs and a few other people. And I was actually on the board with, or invited to the board with Rob and Mark, some of the founders of Upside Foundation, for another organization that was moving up here from the US. And it didn't work out quite well for tax reasons and other reasons. And got to the point of saying, like, we could probably do this on our own without having to deal with outside organizations. And Mark and Rob kind of got it started. And Janie came on board really, really early. They started the organization, and then right away I said, awesome, if it's going, we'll be the first ones to pledge. And it was really early on in our career at Hubba, but that was the genesis of all of it.
Yeah, I think we have a picture of it, of you actually signing the documents. It's you and like 3 or 4 other employees. So I think it was like right at the beginning.
Yeah, it was quite small. We had a small office in the back of another tech company here. It was like 4 desks, 5 desks. And, when you have the option to say, hey, will you donate 1% of your equity to charity, and your equity is probably worth about $35 at the time, I'll wholeheartedly give that 1% any day of the week.
Amazing. And then so, flash forward or flash back to, 3.5 years ago, Jen joins, and obviously you two hit it off. And knowing what I know about Jen, I understand that she's a fabulous community builder who's probably a great asset to the organization. But, bringing it back to your personal relationship and how that's evolved a bit, can you talk a bit more about how your relationship's evolved over the last kind of 3.5 years, personally and professionally, and how you've supported each other in both growth on the Upside Foundation and then Jen, with Ben as a founder?
Yeah. Well, Ben has always been a huge supporter of Upside and of mine. And I think I recognize the privileged position that I'm in, because Ben has sort of said, I'll do anything you ask me to do, Jen. So I take that very, very seriously, and I'm very careful with what I do ask him for. But he's always available to me to answer questions as I'm brainstorming things, or to, hey, anytime we have a new idea or a new concept we want to try, we always use him as our guinea pig, and he's always very willing to give us his time in mornings and evenings to host events and to sort of be the first step to help us test a new concept that we're running. And I think sitting on the board, right now you are the only entrepreneur who's representing the entrepreneurial position on the Upside Foundation board. And I think there's so much value in having sat on both sides of the table. I also sit on the board of a charity, and I think that's helped me to be better at managing my own board. And so I think Ben brings that perspective of knowing what it's like to be a founder reporting into a board, and he really advocates for me on that and helps keep us in check in terms of what my role is and what I should be going to the board for. And he's just always been a fabulous supporter, and I always know I can count on him.
When you finally realize that you have something, which is what we did at Upside, we realized that companies didn't want to be part of it. It's very similar to running a startup, and there's nothing like worse and more cliche than everybody says, oh yeah, we run things like a startup, but we really did run it like a startup. And we didn't really know what we had. It was a different model. It was really interesting. The thing is, when we did realize that there was something here that people would want to be part of this, that was kind of the time where we said, okay, how do we amplify it? And there's no better person to amplify things than Jen, to be able to take it and run out to the community. And no matter what you have, even from a board perspective, like even me personally, I really love and cherish kind of closer relationships, more personal one-on-one. I don't love, staying on it like with a megaphone on a soapbox. Jen is great, and will stand and scream from anywhere to make sure that people understand what we do. So to have somebody out there who's got, just this really authentic heart that people gravitate towards, which is indicative to what we're trying to do at Upside Foundation anyway, and get that feeling out to the world. It was no better person. And from our perspective, we've been pretty fortunate. Like that's from an Upside, perspective. But Jen and I have a really good relationship on our own. And I think a lot of it too is just, I went through many phases of building my business, and you can always point back to, just the shortcuts a little bit, where somebody says, hey, give this, just listen to them. Just give them 10 minutes, just listen. And you can always see the step function changes when you get a few of those meetings. So especially when you're dealing with something like Upside Foundation, there's a little bit of this weird tech startup-y thing, but also this charity thing where you're trying to ask people for equity, but it's not really equity that they're giving you. It's kind of equity that they get to use. And it's a little bit of it was a hard thing to understand. Just to be able to say to people, hey, listen, Jen's in the circle, right? Give her 5 minutes and just listen to what's up. And that, credibility piece worked for me when people said, hey, just take a moment. And I think that's what we try and do as well, is just to let people know that when they get a message saying, hey, you should donate a percentage of your company to equity, that's not a Nigerian prince that you should have a few minutes with Jen. And it's been a lot of our the value that we can bring is just those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And Jen, so it's interesting to hear Ben talk about Upside like a startup, because I feel like you've spoken about it in that regard as well. And you left a very different career path to join the Upside. I'd be curious to hear just a little bit then for you, what was it that attracted you to this opportunity, knowing that there were some risks and there might be some harder sells along the way. So even though you knew you'd have wonderful people like Ben supporting you, there were inherent risks. So what was it that drew you to the organization?
Yeah, so my background was in corporate consulting, and that was a great place to start a career in terms of learning some fundamental skills. But after a number of years, I was sort of tired of advising from the outside, and I'd started to have some friends go into this cool new tech startup space, and it sounded like way more fun than corporate consulting. So I was definitely drawn to the space. I sort of had one step in between when I was at corporate consulting, and then I did some corporate social responsibility consulting. And from there, I just really wanted the chance to be really challenged and really like the idea of building something, not quite from scratch, but like taking something that was already starting to be developed and really taking it to the next level. And that was really exciting to me. I was at a point in my life when, I was able to take those kind of risks, just have faith that, I had very much faith that it was going to work out, but I knew if it didn't, I was going to be okay. So, yeah.
Cool. And since you started, what would be some of your proudest accomplishments?
I can't believe it was over 2 years ago now, but definitely that 150 by 150 campaign was a very exciting time. We launched it on April 4th, 2017, and it was all around Canada's 150th birthday. And we were at 75 member companies and decided to try to double within the year. But our secret goal was to actually get there by July 1st, which gave us 3 months. And so I don't even know how we did it, but we did it. We had 75 people join in 3 months, and that kind of growth is unprecedented and hasn't been that fast since then. It's amazing what can happen when you singularly focus on one thing for a long time. But definitely that was really exciting, and to see again, this nice moment of validation that there's something here, people are excited about this. So that was definitely very exciting. We've had a few exits in the last few years, so that's been really exciting to see that the model really works. Right now we're up to 6 exits with about $275,000 raised for charity. So that was nice to see that, okay, this is really starting to work. Obviously, most of our members still have yet to experience that kind of event, but that was really validating for us.
And sorry, just for the newbies, like myself listening, when you talk about exits in the context of the Upside Foundation, what does that mean exactly?
So it's any sort of liquidity event. So there's a few different ways to structure a donation, but most people give us stock options. Mm-hmm. So if you think about a stock option, we would get them just like an employee at a startup would. And then when they have a liquidity event, so either are acquired or go public, at that point we get to exercise our options, and then we take the cash proceeds from those and donate to the charity of the company's choice. Mm-hmm. So that's what an exit event, liquidity event means for us.
And Ben, just in terms of Hubba's position with the Upside Foundation, does Hubba currently give, I'm assuming, 1% of equity?
Yeah, so when we initially pledged, we donated 1% of our equity at the time, which, since we've raised several more rounds of funding has been diluted, but the value of that stock has gone up considerably. Mm-hmm. So when we initially donated, it really was almost worth less than probably the paper that we pledged on. It was just an idea and kind of a dream at the time, which was a really great thing to do. But since then, the value of that charitable donation that we're able to do is in the millions at this stage. So we're hoping to obviously ride this significantly longer in terms of IPO later on, which could be an exponential difference to where it is today. So all of that goes right back to local charities.
Very cool. And we'll talk a little bit later just about giving back as an organization, but I think just quickly
or investing in the community, as Ben used to call it.
Yes, I like that. Investing in the community. For those listening, just the story of Hubba, I think as someone who just kind of started coming into the ecosystem myself, a few years back, Hubba was one of those organizations that was always kind of at the top in terms of Ben's a great founder, Hubba's a great success story. But how did Hubba start? Like, what is kind of your origin story when it comes to life as a founder?
That's a good one. I think that there's lots of different kind of cutesy founder stories. I've
heard
cutesy. Yeah.
So listen, like I said, we probably put a lot of those out as well. The truth is, after I was fortunate, I co-founded a company back in 2004. We sold it in 2008, and the CEO who acquired us asked me to start their international operation. So I lived and worked all over the world. I was over living in London at the time, built another organization out there. But it's when I was out there, I knew I was going to start something else again. And I don't know generally how it works. There's usually that notion of like, hey, I had this really big problem and I fixed the problem and my friends liked it and then other people started liking it. And I think that works in some cases. I've always been an enterprise software guy. I like the business world and how business and technology meet and how they can solve problems. And Hubba was a little bit different. Hubba was not a solution looking for a problem. It was really just looking at a market. I looked at the market of commerce and just saying, hey, there's, just in North America alone, there are trillions of dollars, about $5 trillion of commerce between retailers and consumers. And that's the world that we all know. But there's a layer underneath that from retailers to brands. And that's a much bigger market. And there's no dominant player there. We all know the Walmarts and the Amazons and the Shopifys on the higher layer, but there's going to be a dominant player. So that was how I attacked it, which was just saying there's a massive, massive market here. There's going to be a big player. Somebody's going to own it. I'm just as smart as anybody. I might go after that. I must go after that. So that's where I started it. Then it was really trying to figure out what's the proper attack vector to win that market. And we're now like 8.5, 9 years into this thing, coming up on 9 years. The first deck I ever did on Hubba, just thinking about it and getting it down on paper, was in December of 2010. So that was almost 9 years ago when we were recording this. And there's been lots of changes to how I looked at the market. You can understand the cataclysmic shift that's been going on in retail since 2010. So all of these kind of take place. So it wasn't just finding the puzzle piece or the puzzle of the market at the time. It's like the picture keeps on changing. So you're always trying to do this puzzle that keeps on changing. So we're now quite a while in, and only would I say in the last year, maybe 18 months or so, would I say that we kind of have the playbook. And I say that knowing full well that, by next month that could totally change as well, and I can flip that on its head again. But there's this really interesting piece where, about every year, every 18 months or so, I always have this kind of feeling of, there's an opportunity that we're going after, but there's a deeper opportunity here, and kind of refocus the company on that. And it'll be interesting to see, there's one side of the equation that says, hey, Ben, if you would have just stuck to the original thing, we could have built a pretty successful company here. There's another narrative that says, wow, we keep on innovating every year. And if Ben didn't do that, and Hubba didn't do that, then all of a sudden we wouldn't be around 9 years in. So both of those are equally true today. And the only thing that's going to tell which one was right was how successful we are later. So right. I'm always kind of going for that. But we're just at the point where it feels like it works, and we understand the world, and that will likely all change tomorrow.
Right. And I think, through some of the conversations we've been having, we definitely don't shy away from shining a light on challenges of being a founder. Because as I said, when I first entered the community, you just see the tip of the iceberg. So you just hear Hubba's successes. But in terms of looking at kind of even like the early days, 9 years ago when you were first starting out, what are some of your favorite failures or some of the bigger challenges you faced as a founder?
Yeah, listen, it's always a challenge. I think the biggest thing any founder has, obviously, is just energy, right? Like you have to wake up every morning and go after this thing. It's really easy when you're raising money and people are talking about you. It's really hard when you're like, wow, we got past that level. Now we need to take it to another level. Like, let's go. I actually always have a very hard time, 2 hard times. I think you talked about the Hubba reputation. I'm glad that people are talking about us. That's always great. Mm-hmm. It's nice because we, like I said, reaping the benefits of the community is that people, investors come in. Hubba's always at the top of somebody's list where they say, hey, you should go talk to Hubba. We've gotten great investors from that. Our Series B investors came from that. We get great employees. So people say, hey, I know somebody's looking for a role change. We get them, or somebody's moving back to Canada. You should talk to them. So that's all been beneficial, but there's a piece where it's just like, that's all great, but like we need to build a company, and not a company, we need to build a business out of this. So there are different stages of technology companies. If you're a startup, to me, where trying to figure stuff out, then you build a company out of it, and then you need to build a business out of it. So we've been pretty heads down for the last year and a half building the business piece of this, and it's all a challenge. The energy thing is a big thing. It's like we were talking about kids earlier on. Like there's a lot of things that happen in that first year, the first 18 months, that first stage, right? They talk, they eat, they start, walking, and then eventually it becomes longer and longer in between kind of those milestones. So you really have to have kind of the conviction in this that it's the right thing.
Yeah. And sorry, you said your youngest is 9 years old.
My is 8.
It's 8. Yeah. Okay, so just about the same age as your
turning 8. So he was just being born.
Wow. Yeah. Well, your company was being born.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was great. So I think people go back to the energy piece. I think it's really hard to turn off, right? So this is what you do all the time. Your brain is just always playing multiple versions of chess. So you're always playing all these different games and. The interesting thing about running a business is I'm always running Hubba as it is today, but there's also like 20 other variations that I'm always running. And then eventually, the algorithm may shift to one of those or get rid of this one. Like you're always moving. The only thing that turned my brain off was my kids, spending time with my kids. And by off, I mean probably down a little bit. I hope I've been a very engaged parent. That was the number one thing. If I talk to we'll talk about this, I'm sure, a little bit too, but I spend a lot of time with other founders and other people and just like listening to everybody. I always make my own decisions, but I listen a lot. And the number one thing with founders, especially ones that had a family, were that they always obviously regretted not spending enough time with their family or friends or whoever's important to them. And I just said that was never gonna be me. So right away, like, my family was first, and my work family, Hubba, was second. I was third, and then I spent a lot of time realizing that you never get to third, so then you had to kind of figure all that stuff out too, to make sure that you took care of yourself to have enough energy, going back to our initial point, to take things to another level. Yeah.
It's so true. I think, you and I, Jen, we've had these types of conversations, like whether you have a family or not, just as a founder, as a leader, as a just, day-to-day person, how do you balance it all? For you, Jen, again, because you do work in a startup environment, and we were joking earlier that you're omnipresent. I go somewhere, there's Jen, and she's on, right? We talked about your amazing energy earlier. So what works for you, just in terms of prioritizing your day-to-day and taking care of yourself?
Yeah, I think you go through a really interesting shift in life. Like when you're young, you're supposed to say yes to everything. The world is your oyster, and to take advantage of all these opportunities. And as you progress in your career, you just get so many opportunities that if you say yes to everything, you never actually get to the stuff that really matters, or that you need to do to take care of yourself. So I definitely have developed a very strong self-care practice. I typically get up at 5:30 most mornings. I'm one of those people that follows the rules. But I also believe that you can never do all the things you're supposed to do. So for a while I was really good at working out, and 5 days a week I was working out, and I'm like, if I do once or twice a week, that's fine. But I've read 21 books this year. So that for me was all I wanted was to sit in my cozy chair and read my book, and that makes me so happy and gives me that centering in the morning. I also meditate during that time as well, and that just lets me go into my day having focused on my priorities and what really matters in my life, and having some me time before I go out into the craziness of my day. And also trying to say no to more things. I'm actually home some evenings. Sometimes it's nice to see my husband. So trying to not be out every night of the week, most weeks.
Yeah, I hear you. It's hard. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day, and it's like, there's 5 things that are important in your life, and at best you can prioritize 3. And I said, really? How do you prioritize even 3? Because I find, like, what I do is I just pick 2 things at any given time, and then I rotate. So 1 month I'll focus on 2 things, and the next I'll focus on 2.
Yes.
It's just it's hard.
Listen, they say you can have everything, just not all at once.
Yes. And what about you, Jen? Like, looking back on your earlier, I guess it's been 3.5 years, but that first year with Upside, any failures or personal challenges that you faced that you want to share?
Yeah, I think, I was the only employee for my first 3 years here. And so I basically was doing 12 different jobs, which usually meant that I was doing 1 job pretty well and 11 jobs, in my opinion, very poorly. So, a lot of it was just that self-management of like, accepting that this was just the way it is, and that it was okay to, drop the ball on some other things. As long as the ball didn't hit the floor, you were okay if it fell down a little bit. And so I think a lot of my learnings were about that prioritization piece, and that, when I did drop everything and just focus on, getting new members on board, for example, we had amazing results from that. And I wish that I had the discipline to do that more and say, for this month, I'm only going to do this one thing and sort of let everything else go. Because when you're trying to do 12 jobs at the same time, that means you're giving each one, 2-3 hours a week. And it's very hard to move the dial on anything when you're giving it 2 or 3 hours a week. So I think that's been my lesson. And I still don't think I've learned it as well as I should have. And I still try to do everything, but just trying to be a little bit more focused and prioritize better so that you can actually shift some things and get them ticked off your list before moving on to the next thing.
And then on the flip side, or upside rather, sorry, I had to. In your early days with the organization, in terms of getting new founders on board, what are some things that worked really well? Because we talked a bit earlier about some of the inherent risks of coming to this organization, and that, you hear Ben's story and there's so much going on. It's so hard to prioritize. And so unfortunately, this notion of giving back or donating your upside isn't top of mind for a lot of founders.
Right.
So what's something that worked well for you to show the value to an early stage founder?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about this over the years in terms of what is the value proposition of being part of something like Upside. And I think that the one piece that has to be there is this desire to want to make a difference in the world or want to invest in your community. So that's, I think, is sort of the only non-negotiable around, if that's a priority for you, then it's just a matter of figuring out whether doing this model is the right model for you. So, obviously for the model to work, you need to be planning to have a liquidity event one day. So if you plan to, just run your business and have it be self-sustaining for a long time, that's great. There's a lot of other ways that make more sense for you to give back. But if you are planning to sell one day or IPO one day, then this is the model for you. We found that a lot of the value in joining something like Upside has been in the community that we've created. When I started, there was 50 companies. Now we just reached 250 a few weeks ago. So we've got this amazing community of founders who share those 2 characteristics. They want to make a difference and they want to build a great company. And so I'm very biased, but I think they're the best of the people. They're so warm-hearted. Everybody's so happy to go out of their way to help each other. I love hosting our events because we get to get everyone together, and everyone's so warm and happy and driven and happy to help each other and wanting to build something great so they can do something great. I forget your original question, but I think I answered it.
No, you did, just in terms of selling founders on the value.
Yes.
I got it.
Just the notion, because you're talking about priority, and I actually think that because it's hard to prioritize, that is why you need an organization like this. So when I look at this, there's a few things that, and sometimes my discussion when I talk to founders is a little bit different, but the first one, forget about all, the community stuff is amazing. There's so many reasons to do it, But from just a logistical perspective, the notion of, hey, I do want to do something at some point, right? At some point, if we have a great exit, whatever, in my head, I'm going to give back, whether it's me personally or whether it's... So the notion, if that's your notion, there's so many things that happen in the course of building a business that it just becomes harder and harder and harder to do that. So because you don't have a lot of time, this is a great option because you say, you know what, my company's not worth anything right now, or it's worth very little, or it's in the early stages. I can go put a certain percentage of my equity on the cap table. Nobody can touch that. Future investors aren't going to change that. When things get really crazy in the business, it's going to change that. When I've got all these co-founder conflicts and, we think about it now. If I put it on the cap table, I don't have to think about it ever again. I know it's there, and every time my company does better and better and better, it's going to grow, and I don't have to do anything. So that on its own is enough. And we have to remember that it's a bit of a weird proposition because it's not saying take that 1% and give it to upside. Right? What you're doing is you're saying, I'm really just allocating that 1%, using upside as a proxy so that I can donate to whoever I want after. So I think that's number one. You do get that, well, I can always do that on my own. Right? What I say, the reason why I did this at upside was just the tactical piece of it. That 1% on the cap table was great. Number two was, as Jen said, the community. I get to spend time with other families. There are lots of ways to do that. There are lots of forums, but this is a really great way with a bit of a different type of group of people that think a little bit differently than the typical people I'm usually working with. So that was always super helpful. And of course, there's perks and there's really great events and things that we get to do, but it's really the humans was kind of the second piece. The third piece was I could do it on my own, but by virtue of being with Upside, there's opportunities that I have that I couldn't have elsewhere. So, one of the things we talk about initiatives like the Sick Kids, the Tech for Sick Kids initiative, where the tech community gets to really build and be responsible for a state-of-the-art emergency room or emergency center for world-class company organization like Sick Kids. You wouldn't be able to necessarily do that on your own, but because you're part of this group, you're able to get access to certain things like that, which is great. Yeah. And I think that last part is, on my own, I can donate, but also by doing this, I get to kind of create this amplification effect of being able to get other people to do it with me. And those to me are the reasons why I do it. One is obviously just the logistical, the community, access to things that I wouldn't have had before. And that last one is just because I'm doing this, maybe 2 others, 5 others, 10 others, 20 others will, because they know about it and they see it as an interesting piece.
Yeah. I think 2 things I would add to that. One is that Sick Kids has done an amazing job at bringing the Upside members who have committed their Upside to Sick Kids into the hospital. They give tours for founders to really understand the impact that their donations are going to have. But they also have a massive sign recognizing everybody who's pledged their Upside. So it sits outside the emergency room right now. It's about 5 feet wide by 3 feet tall. It's huge. And it lists every single person who has actually made this commitment to them. And that's relatively unheard of, right? You don't get recognized until you actually make a donation. So to speak to your point, Ben, around providing those opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, there's a lot of those types of things that exist. The other thing that I would say that really makes this valuable in terms of why I do this through Upside versus on your own is that to me it's the difference between Mark Zuckerberg saying I'm going to take my personal wealth and make a charitable foundation with my family versus saying I work for the kind of company that cares about this, that the company I work for has these values and is committed to this. It's not a sort of a vague commitment. It's it's real. It's on the cap table. It's the cash may not be there yet, but it is a real thing. And to me, it's just a much more tangible commitment. If you're already planning to do that one day, why not just build it into your culture today?
Right. And Ben, would you say then for Hubba that it has had that positive trickle down effect, or even if you look at attracting talent, for example, how does this notion of the way that you've embedded giving back into your organization and it's baked into your cap table, how does that influence?
Yeah, listen, I think I don't know if we're a little different actually, but we usually don't go out and promote our programs and what we do. I think it's just embedded as part of our culture. Mm-hmm. We're the type of company that will make certain decisions because this is who we are. One of them just happens to be that we increase the value in our company, and a lot of it goes back to the community. It's just something that's there. The other one is you come to Hubba and you know, like, it's a wonderful safe space where people can say things. Like, there's just certain things that you have that are just what you do and how you make decisions, and this is a part of it. So, like, we're probably not there saying, hey, you should join Hubba because we're part of the Upside or whatever, but it's the credibility piece of it. You know, when people really care about Hubba and they're looking at joining, and they see that we're part of the Upside Foundation, the answer is like, yeah, of course they are. Like, that's what they do. So that's kind of how it works for us, is just kind of part and parcel embedded in our DNA of all of this. And it really is just almost like a credibility check of like, yeah, you kind of don't just talk the talk, you actually walk the walk.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I've been fortunate through Tech for Sick Kids to meet quite a few of the other members of the Upside, and I would say that they really just embody that ethos of, I'm not doing this for street cred, like, I'm doing this because I genuinely believe.
Well, that's why I find it so funny. We just talked about the plaque that's sitting outside, which is great, but like, not everybody wants to be on that plaque. Like, not everybody wants the picture in front of the whatever, which is also wonderful. Like, not because of things like that, just because they want to do better. And like, if that happens, great. And you'll see most of the people that participate in things like that say like, oh yeah, I will be part of that and I will make it public only because I think it's going to get 20 other companies to know about it. Not because like, I need my name up there, I need that. And I'll only do it because it amplifies the impact of Upside, which, you know, for us is the type of people we like to be.
Do you think this is a uniquely Canadian phenomenon, just in terms of our ecosystem here and folks embedding this into their business and then being okay with not shouting it from rooftops?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, certainly there's initiatives like this that exist in other countries, Israel and the US for sure. But it's a good question about whether they shout from the rooftops more than we do. I don't know.
I don't care, to be honest. Like, some people, if that's what does it, awesome, go do that. If like you want your name, amazing. If you want to be low key about it, amazing. Like you said, you want to do the personal thing, awesome. You want to do the company thing, awesome. Like, all it is about how can you impact the world. And the reason why most people become entrepreneurs is that they have some impact in the world. So there's a way that you can, again, amplify that impact. You can do it through your business, and then the side effects of your business being successful also help other areas. And honestly, I don't care. Like, I hope people join the Upside Foundation only because it wasn't because we really, this is going to come out weird when I'm staring at you, but it wasn't about growing the Upside Foundation, it was about growing the impact to the community. And the Upside Foundation came as, okay, let's give you a really easy, simple vehicle to be able to do something like that. And that's what we care about. It's just that the world becomes a better place based off of the work that we do, and how can we help people and facilitate that.
Yeah. And now, you know, you spoke earlier about raising Series B, and I think it was really helpful to understand that you were able to kind of bake this piece of equity you donate into your cap table really early. But how does an investor respond to that? Is it, again, like, I don't want to lead your answer here at all. I'm more just curious to know, when they see that at your cap table, what is that response?
So it's been great. It doesn't impact a new investor, right? A new investor coming in, the only thing they see is you're gonna have a million angel investors. Some of them might be good, some of them might be terrible, but like, a new investor is not going to care as much. If they see Upside Foundation on there, it's usually a conversation piece of like, what is this thing and why is it there? And it also helps tell them about the type of company that you are. So it doesn't impact them. The interesting thing about Upside Foundation, specifically in Canada and also in the Israeli version and other versions, is VCs are a large part of it. So VCs are like, our founders were VCs, like Mark and Rob are VCs. You know, when Jenny joined them, it was a VC world, and our goal is to work with VCs to help them not just be okay with it, but to say, hey, like, we're going to invest in you. One thing you should think of when we sign this this term sheet is that you put a percentage of your option pool away for Upside. So it's such a minor, small thing, and you're really just pledging that the economics of it shouldn't matter, the legality, like, it should be just like you're treating it as a warrant or a part of the option pool as you would with anything else. There should be no issues whatsoever, whether you're a VC, whether you're anybody else who's looking to capture.
Totally.
So what a number of our member companies have said is that they've actually really appreciated the value signaling that having this on their cap table does for them. So it helps them make sure that the employees they're attracting and the investors they're attracting are values aligned people, where they've said, if an investor sees this and has a problem with it, that's a really important red flag for me to know that's probably not the kind of person I want to work with. If they care about this 1% of the company, it's a signal for them that they may not be someone they want to work with. So people actually use that as a tool to figure out who they want to work with.
Right. And you and I were speaking earlier, I think, about like kind of the metrics or KPIs of giving back. Is there anything else that, questions that come up with founders or metrics that you put out on the table for them to assess giving back early on as part of their business model?
I think the business case has been very well proven that employees today, especially millennials and especially Gen Z, really expect to see this at companies. And certainly they only want to be working with companies that are planning to have a positive impact in the world in some way. So the numbers are very clear around that. It helps with your retention, it helps with recruiting, it helps with customer loyalty. People are willing to spend more on what they feel are socially responsible brands. So there's definitely a very strong business case to be made there. Fixed Software has done a really interesting work around actually tracking the percentage of customers who've said that the reason they chose to work with them because of their social responsibility programs. So they can attribute about 11% of their revenue directly to their social responsibility programs. So they're definitely, the business case is very clear that doing this, as long as you're actually talking about it and making sure people know about it really can drive a lot of value for your business.
And I hope you don't mind my asking those types of questions, because I do really believe that there is just that altruistic notion of giving back. I'm just thinking about, for example, for us at Next Canada, especially with Next 36, because they are so early stage, it's just, I'm trying to get at the levers that we can help to pull, because we as an organization obviously believe very much in giving back. And it's something that we'd love to see more entrepreneurs doing. So I appreciate you answering some of those questions.
Yes, of course.
That being said, let's jump on that. The business case is there to help justify the initial decision.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The notion of saying, I'm not sure if this is really for me, but prove the business case as to why I think, it won't fly.
Right.
Like, you have to innately believe that you want to be able to do something like this. And it just so happens, guess what? It is also really easy to do. It is also going to benefit your business. It is also going to be a good, like you said, value signal to people that you're doing this type of thing. Those are after the fact.
Yeah.
It's not to convince people of that.
Yeah, 100%.
And sorry, so I know we are almost out of time. I just wanted to shift gears a little bit and just kind of look to the future. And so, Ben, you've been honest about, your founder journey obviously hasn't been a linear path, and I know you've had some pivots along the way as well. What's next for Hubba?
Yeah, I feel like we're almost 9 years in now, and somebody asked, I feel like we're just getting started. Somebody just asked me, they said, where are you? You're running a marathon. Like, what mile are you on? I'm like, we haven't even left the house yet. Like, I haven't even got my shoes. I don't feel like I just literally just kind of started. And I think I'll probably always feel that way. So for us is we've figured out kind of our business, not just like what we are as a startup and what that means and what the company wrapped around that is. It's what the business of what we're doing is now. And now it's growing it out and scaling it. So we've had our heads down for the last 18 months. You use the word pivot. I never, pivot to me is we're looking one direction, now we're going another. We were always in the right spot. We understood the market. We knew the market. And we always just basically said, there was a thread here. Let's go pull that thread. That one seems like it's a better opportunity. And then we're in a different world, a little bit of a different world. And then we're just tightening up on that one. So we've been doing that quite a bit. And that led to hard changes, like the business need, the structure of the company needs to change if we're going to go down this path. That's going to result in different people being here and different people not being here. That was a very difficult thing to do, but it was the right thing for the business. So I think that we're at the stage now where we know the business, we know the market. Like I said, that could all change tomorrow, but we've had our heads down and now we're coming out and it's a ridiculously stable business in a big market that we've known about for 10 years that finally has the wave is cresting and the market is going where we want it to go. So it's all coming together for us. It's just taken 9 years, and we're literally getting started.
Yeah. Are you able to elaborate on that a little bit when you say the wave is cresting? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think the things that we saw that were going to happen, the shift in retail, so away from the big retailers, more focus on emerging brands. So all we do, so we didn't really go into this, but at Hubba, we focus on these emerging brands where it's not their hobby and it's not an established brand like P&G. It's this big middle group in between. It's getting easier and easier to start these brands. So it is their business, and there's a huge pool of them. And if you're a brand, you need to figure out how to get out to the world. And the way that you do that is you either go knock on retailers' doors and say, carry my product, or you go start a Shopify site, and now you have to create an audience. And it's getting harder and harder to differentiate there. It's getting more and more expensive. And how about what we do is we say, hey, you're this really great brand. We're going to put you to where your audience already exists, where they live, work, and play. And our first tool that we use for that is this marketplace. We'll get you into local communities through independent retailers. And that's the Hubba marketplace. But we figured that part out now. Now we're looking at opening up other channels. So where else can we put you into this world of commerce, into other areas where you come in contact with products, whether it's gyms or at your office or student residences or in different places, whether it's in-home through sampling. And then what else can we do to help the brands in terms of things like distribution and shipping? So we're just starting to build out the other channels for the business, kind of vertically, horizontally. And vertically, we're going a little bit deeper in terms of the services that we offer from brands. Okay. So we have that first part that finally works. We have a strong foundation, and now we're looking at kind of growth and expansion through building our own other companies, opening up new channels and partnering and acquiring other companies.
Awesome. Any final pearls of wisdom for someone who might be considering getting into entrepreneurship, or even an early stage founder who might be thinking about giving back in some way?
Aside from touch,
yeah, sure.
No, I got asked this a lot. Obviously, the what would you tell your younger self, and I don't know if there's anything there. I think the point is maybe don't listen to anybody. I look at this and I say, I wish I would have known. You're the captain of your own experience, and you should listen to everybody, and you should hear what people say and what people have gone through to help give you shortcuts. But at the end of the day, it's your decision. Nobody knows the answer in any of this stuff, especially from a business perspective. Forget about the life perspective. From a business perspective, sure, people can help you avoid certain landmines that they've walked on, but it's a different world. If people even were successful, even if it was in your own market, times have changed since they were successful. 6 months in our world changes everything. So listen to everything, but nobody knows. So figure it out for yourself. You're in charge. Listen, and then distill it down and make your own decisions. And nobody knows what's right except for you.
Right. And Jen, for you, obviously at a personal level, again, bringing back to you essentially running a startup of your own, but you also cross paths with so many founders, right? And how many organizations are part of the Upside portfolio today?
So we have just over 250 member companies.
250 member companies.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've met a lot of founders. What would you say are, I'm not going to ask you to name names, but just in terms of some of the stronger founders you've seen, what is it about them that has stood out to you, or that you think are some values that founders should live by?
I think one of the commonalities amongst the really successful founders that I've seen is just this sense of calm, sort of in opposition to my energy. But this idea of they don't let things get to them. They don't get rattled. They have this ability to sort of step back and see the longer term and really understand that, there's so much more at play here, and it is a long game, and to not let the sort of minor setbacks as you go really get in the way of being focused on your longer term vision.
For sure. And if anybody knows about it being a long game, we're thinking of our friend Ben. And again, I know, to Jen's earlier point, just you being out in the community, and I think both of you are just so giving of your time. Again, I think you have doppelgangers out there. But again, I think that you both are doing a really fantastic job of telling that story of the journey behind these organizations and the importance of giving back. So if there isn't anything else that you want to share with our listeners, I think we're out of time. So thank you again. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for tuning into LaunchPod. We're so proud to be part of this community doing such great things to move our country forward, but our reach only goes as far as your support. So please download and subscribe to amplify the voices doing the hard work to advance Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem.